Welcome to Art with Lórien, the place to reconnect with your inner artist and discover the joy of painting outside the lines. So welcome to episode 9. In today's episode, we will be extending our practice and knowledge of two-dimensional shapes, as well as learning about the element of art called line and putting those two elements of art, shapes and lines, together into an original composition. And so I'd like to introduce our materials for today's lesson. You will require two types of paper. You can use your Bristol board or any other type of heavyweight paper that you like, or your journal, your sketchbook. And I'm going to be using this mixed media book to do one of the exercises that I'm going to be sharing with you today. And so have this, or have that paper available. And then for the painting, have your favorite watercolor paper available. And I will be using my Strathmore cold press 140 pound paper. And so that's this one. And also have your pencil, have a straight edge or ruler. Again, have some of your shapes, your stencils that are the circles. So I added a smaller one today. Again, these are just household items, things that you have in your cupboards, in your kitchen, or whatever. This is a coaster, and these are a couple of lids. So just simple circles that you can use as a stencil if you're going to be making circles. And of course your paints, brushes, water container, palette knives, palette, spray bottle, and I'm going to include also this time the Viva paper towels. One art material that I'm going to be adding this week is a black water-based marker. Any brand that you like, there are a few that I like, and the only one that I was able to find in my local art supply store is this Prismacolor, and I do like it. It has a brush tip on one end, and the other end is a fine point. There is another company that I like as well, and that one they didn't have the black. And if you like, you could even use other colors. So if you happen to have any kind of marker around, it can even be the Crayola markers, just something that you have, feel free to use that. But if you're going to buy something new, these are really nice, and so I recommend having like a nice broad water-based black marker in your toolkit, and that ought to do it. So let's get started. So for today's episode, let's start with looking at line. I'm going to talk about line and show you what I mean. And so what line is a line is a continuous mark that keeps going. There are various types of lines. There's lines that, and this is what I'm going to be using my marker for to show you, lines that are thin, lines that are horizontal, lines that are vertical, lines that are zigzag. There's the curvature of the line. There's, let's do a real diagonal of a line. There's the thickness, thin, curved, and that's about it. And then there's something called implied line. An implied line is where our eyes put the line in. So let's see if I've covered everything. And this is what I have here. We have thin, thick, curved, zigzag, diagonal, vertical, horizontal, and implied. Implied is where our minds fill in the blank. And so these are the different types of lines. And now I'd like to talk about the different types of shapes. And so just like qualities of line express different energies and different frequencies and exude that energy in your composition, in your art, I went ahead and drew some of these shapes to show you examples of how you place and draw out your shapes, how they have that same effect, the same energetic effect, and create that state. So for example, horizontal shapes, just like horizontal lines, create that feeling of repose or rest. And if you think about the horizon, when we look out at the ocean and where the sky meets the sea, there's that horizon line, and it's very peaceful to look at. It feels peaceful, restful. We want to, be calm. It has that effect on us and has that energetic imprint, and that energy is expressed. And then if you think about, standing, being upright in a vertical shape, just like a vertical line, it has this feeling of strength. It exudes energy of being like kind of stable, strong. And then diagonal lines, diagonal shapes as well, always communicate action, dynamism, and something's happening, movement. And so what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to do an exercise where I'm going to ask you just to draw one of each of the types of lines 10 different times, and fill your paper, fill your sketchbook paper or your Bristol board with those lines. So for example, thin lines, thick lines, curvy, vertical, horizontal, zigzag, and just really play with them. And so it's not scribbling so much, maybe kind of like doodling, but doodling with intention, and where you're seeing the effect of the line and how it makes you feel. So let's go ahead and do that. And so I've gone ahead and filled in my paper with approximately 10 different examples of those lines I talked about. I have my horizontal lines, my vertical lines, thin lines, thick lines, diagonals, zigzags, curvy. And what I did when I was just spending some time doing this is just feeling my feelings, feeling into my gut. How does it feel when I draw this line? And there is an energy from the mark making, from that point that continues to actually seeing it. So visually seeing it, the type of line and the energy it's giving off, and then also the feeling as you're doing it, as you're drawing, you can feel that energy. And so we'll take this information about line and the information that I shared about how you take shapes and where you place them, if you draw them vertically, horizontally, diagonal, and how those different methods of using these expressive elements create the energy that you'd like your composition to have. So we're going to go ahead and combine line and shape together into a painting composition now. And so I'm going to get my colors ready and we're going to get started. And so for our painting, you're going to be combining line, combining two-dimensional shapes, using the directions and the expressive qualities of those directions. And then we're going to be bringing in a new color scheme I'd like to introduce, adding it to our collection of color schemes that we've learned about in previous episodes. For example, complementary, warm, cool. This color scheme is called arbitrary colors. And just like the word arbitrary, it's like there's a randomness. It's like anything goes, any colors you choose. So the color relationships are random, they're arbitrary. And so you just pick the colors you'd like to choose, that you feel that you're going to be. For me, I always like to kind of get into a mood and feel, if you like to meditate, you can get into like some kind of state of mind that you'd like to bring into your painting. You can just paint as is, as you are now, or you can, really bring out that feeling and put it on the paper. Use your shapes and lines to express yourself and really work with your feelings and work with the colors that match your feelings. So that's the color scheme. And one more thing I'd like to say about the materials. In the description for the video, I've listed all the materials, so they're available on my website and also in the description of the video. You can just go down there and I've written them in now. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to be using my pencil to compose my composition, and I'm going to include about 10 different lines. I'm going to include the thick, thin, wavy, curved, and I'm going to compose this also using my shapes and my stencils. So I'm going to, first of all, I also want to talk about the format of your paper. Of course, horizontal layout or format has that more relaxed, restful effect on the viewer. And the portrait has it's a little more upright. It's like a vertical line. It's like a vertical shape. It's this rectangle. And so this is the horizontal, and just like the horizon line and the lines and the shapes we've been talking about, how you orient your paper does make a difference. And so something else to think about. You may paint and then change the orientation that you present it or hang it or display it or whatever, but just something else to think about when you are creating, that you always have these many choices. You have choices of vertical, horizontal, and all these different options all the time. So hundreds of options to make art with. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with my lines. And like I said, I'm going to ask, and one of the parameters that might help you is to include 10 lines. I'm going to ask you to include 10 different lines. And so I'm going to use my pencil first to draw and put those lines in. And so as you can see, I've created my composition using mostly line, some shape, and this is a non-objective painting composition. And I'm going to go ahead and use my arbitrary colors to create a painting that I like, that feels good to me. Lots of happy accidents.
So I'd like to share my completed non-objective painting using lines, using shapes, and arbitrary colors. And so this is what I came up with. I simply, after I drew the pencil lines for my composition, I used my arbitrary colors. These are the ones I chose today. and I just painted with using different thicknesses, different brushes, and flats and rounds, and to create the thicknesses and the thinness and the shape I have here. And then I came in with my black marker to kind of fill in the gaps and draw in some of these thick lines using the brush tip of the pen, and then the thin lines, and really looking at where these would look good compositionally, and just intuitively I put in these repetitive lines, these verticals, horizontals, and curves, and just kind of like punctuate the painting. And I left the background white, which you're free to do, or you could come in with some color. It's totally up to you. But I wanted also to share, why are we doing these foundational exercises of exploring the elements of art: line, shape, color, and these principles of design, repetition, and unity, and emphasis, and in all these different episodes. And really, we're building a foundation of the building blocks. So when we move into other types of paintings, and then I have paid content that I'll be offering, longer 1 hour to 2 hour classes, where you'll be exposed to many of the kinds of painting styles and methods that I use in my large fine art paintings. And so it's really important to have these foundations, to have all of these basics in your toolbox, in your muscles, in your vocabulary, and to know the vocabulary of art, the building blocks of art making. It all builds on each other in layers. And so we're building the lines, the shapes, the forms, the color schemes, the tints, the tunes, the shapes, the whole color of the rainbow, the color wheel. All these things all build on top of each other, and they start to build a very strong foundation. And pretty soon you'll just be painting intuitively without too much thought. All of this will be intrinsic, and it'll be knowledge and skills that you have, that you may not paint this type of painting, a non-objective painting. This may not be your style. However, doing these types of paintings are very important exercises to have a working knowledge and to build a strong, solid foundation. So with that, I look forward to the next episode, and I'll see you in the studio.